So just a few items on Orion, if you're not familiar with Orion. Orion is Ontario's powerful partner with more than 25 communities in Ontario relying on Orion's advanced digital infrastructure to discover and collaborate. Orion unleashes the power of collaboration across Ontario to foster innovation such as Savvy, if you're familiar with that. Savvy's research goal is to address the design of future application platforms built on flexible, versatile, and evolvable infrastructure that can readily deploy, maintain, and retire large-scale, possibly short-lived distributed applications. We support thriving intelligent communities and in turn economic development in a knowledge economy. We support municipalities, libraries, schools, hospitals, and local governments on their quest to implement smarter, data-driven solutions to tackle big problems. Problems like traffic congestion, healthcare for communities, citizen scientists, education, poverty reduction, and improved lifestyles. We're looking to connect broader ends of the province, remote, rural, northern communities. Innovation beyond location. This is the role that Orion can play. This is the role that Orion wants to play, enabling more people to participate. Engage us. It's a call to action. Orion wants to work with you and be active participants, active partners in the intelligent community initiatives. We have the network, and we want to bring it to bear. And so we're going to have an active discussion today. I'm joined by some very distinguished panelists. I'll introduce them, and they themselves will then introduce themselves and their roles. So let me start off with Rick of Cisco. And then we can turn to Doug, who'll introduce himself, and then Ysni. But Rick, you can.
All right. Can you hear that? Yeah. Okay. My name is Rick Huijbregts. I am with Cisco, and I lead our digital transformation and innovation activities in Canada, of which our Smart Cities or Intelligent Communities program is part of it. I think that's where I'll leave it as an introduction.
That's fair enough. Then we'll delve into it from there.
And good morning. My name is Doug McCollough. I am from the city of Dublin, Ohio. Have to be specific here. And I am the CIO for the city of Dublin. And don't worry, we're going to talk about economic development, but I'm the appropriate person to be here from our city. So thank you for having me.
Hello, I'm Ysni Semsedini, so I'm from the city of Stratford, Ontario. I'm the CEO of Festival Hydro, which is our local distribution company. We service about 20,000 customers in the areas of Stratford, St. Mary's, and we have 5 other communities that we service. I'm also the CEO of our fiber optics company, Rhizome Networks. So I'm going to get into a little bit later how these two companies are kind of connected and how they enable each other to move forward. So that's me.
So I think what we'll do now is we'll have Rick maybe sort of jump into this a little bit, and then we'll, as we go through the panel, we'll open it up for Q&A. But Rick, do you want to?
All right. I'm going to stand, and I apologize. My suit is at the dry cleaners.
Yeah, the bottom half of my suit's at the dry cleaners.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. So one suit. Hey. You know, Cisco salary, and I'm Dutch, exactly. So when we were prepping for this call, we were talking about doing case studies and best practices. And then I was looking at my PowerPoint I did 2 years ago at this event, and I did exactly that. And so I thought today, I come in my work clothes, because I think what we need to do is roll up our sleeves and actually get to work and get going with this. Because a lot what we heard this morning, frankly, are table stakes. My children are 12 and 8, and they're the generation 2020s, and those is the generation that's currently at York Region District School Board and the Catholic school boards. Those are the people we want to keep and employ and activate in our communities. And those are the people that are having very different expectations of how we interact with one another, what outcomes are, what quality of life is. And I look in the room here, and I see none of them are here. And that's maybe a problem. Maybe we need to start to have a stronger diversity in this conversation as to define what's important and how do we get going and actually go and get some action. I'm not saying that the region is not having any action going on. So what I wanted to do, and I said, is there some sort of a whiteboard? It's just me, and I actually see there's a whiteboard, so now I'm going to use it. I thought it would be digital on the iPad, but we'll use pens.
They got your whiteboard. You have to use it.
Now we have to use it. I'm just going to write my name, I think. So I'm a Robert Bell groupie. Is he here or he left? So I've really very little extra or new things to say because I just always regurgitate his PowerPoint presentations and his stories. But if we kind of take what Robert Bell spoke about and we kind of break that down a little bit, what we see in communities, and professionally we do too, is that we very quickly jump to a solution, wanting to show something. Or sometimes we call that the shiny object syndrome. So here's a solution, something very cool, a smart something, smart home, smart light pole, smart fire hydrant. There's lots of smart things. And by the way, you go to Google and you look up smart cities, you get, I think, 1 million hits. So there's lots of opportunity for you to see what the rest of the world is already doing very readily. Now, Robert mentioned several times that this is really not about technology, this is about the why. And by and large, actually, we feel that this is missing in intelligent community or smart city conversations. That we very quickly want to go to something that we can show for, but not have a very clear understanding of why are we wanting to be an intelligent community? What does this mean to us? And Robert mentioned this, is building on your strengths and your assets and using that to elevate and accelerate this journey. And I think it was Chris who earlier was talking about, or someone asked that this is not a, there you are, this is not a, with one end stop or end station. This is a continuous journey. This is not a marathon. This is a series of sprints. And this is the new reality. This is how we are going to need to be a next generation community. Call it intelligent, call it smart, or just being a better community. Now, when we start with why, and there's a great book by Simon Sinek, I think, worth reading. Start with why, before we even start to think about which specific solution. A big chunk of what needs to be included there is, and Robert spoke about it extensively, is people. This is about people. This is about my children and your children, and about the baby boomers and the generation before that, that all live in our communities and need to have good places to live, work, learn, and play, and in a way that they are not necessarily moving out. Is broadband and connectivity important to that? It absolutely is. I think Bob mentioned it, this is the new utility. This cannot be a question anymore if we should be doing this. This is as important as paving roads and putting electrical grid in, because this is frankly the lifeline, I would say, of our next generation 21st economy. Now, what we then also often get to, and this is maybe an IT conversation, is, oh, Internet of Things. Everything is going to get connected, which, by the way, is true. This is happening, and it's happening right under our noses, right? From buses to light poles to stuff in our home that Ted Malucci from Trodell is doing. Everything is connected. We're moving from 15 billion smart objects that communicate over the internet to over 50 billion within the next 4 or 5 years. And all those things need an infrastructure, which is a network. And that is really the topic of this conversation, right? The broadband innovation network. And although it's very important, as you will see, it's one sliver of what we really need to be speaking about. And if we all, and I think that's what's your point, by the way, Chris, if all we focus is on, let's build a very fast, big hunky-dory pipe, and then everyone will come, and economies will flourish, and people will be happy, we may be potentially mistaken, and we need to create a culture of innovation around this. And that happens right here when we connect people with the why and be able to articulate the business outcomes of why we're even doing this. Now, once we have a network, we need an intelligent community operating system, an iOS for cities. And this is happening, and you go to the Far East, cities are run on complex, and I know it's scary, but information systems that allow us to take data from a light pole to integrate with the data in a police car or a bus or at home and start to deliver new services and experiences. And then on top of that, and I realize this is far from complete, we're seeing the rapid emergence of advanced analytics. And very soon, if not already, AI playing a huge role in defining and articulating what experiences are and what services are and how we interact with one another. Now, all this is really the technology discussion or the digital transformation platform that you as a city need and will have. This is not even a question. This is going to be required, that needs to be built and needs to be treated as if it is a fourth utility, but for only one reason, and that is delivering meaningful business outcomes that are going to change the experiences you have in your city. Now, we can sit here and actually have a workshop and say, what are all those business outcomes? And by the way, many of you in the 9 municipalities are doing very interesting things. There's already a smorgasbord or a portfolio of very good, intelligent community projects happening. What I think may be missing, and I think that's why we're all here, is how do we put a bow around this? How do we celebrate this? Because this is a Canadian problem. We don't brag enough about the great things that we do. And I think the role of the region to help support and amplify that is huge. And the role of the region to make sure that if we do something in Vaughan or in Markham or Newmarket or in any of the other communities, that these are not isolated experiences or efforts around a use case where we build a piece of the puzzle and where we're going to procure a piece of this stack, but that this becomes an integrated digital strategy that is going to support where we want to be as a region. I say we want to be. I live in this region, so I'd say I'm one of these people, very passionate and very committed about the opportunities that we have in front of us and opportunities to truly lead in this journey. And that is, well, I'll close and then I'll be quiet, where we appreciate that this is a journey. We have to start somewhere. ROIs kill innovation. And as soon as a spreadsheet comes out and you're asked, what's the economic benefit? I'm like, oh gosh, here we go again. And because you know that once you've proven that there's an economic benefit, what will come up? The security question. Well, it's going to be secure and hacking, and there's always a reason why we shouldn't be doing something, including who's going to pay for this. But all amongst ourselves and the communities, we spend plenty of money on things that are 20th century services. We need to redirect some of that money to starting to build the 21st century experiences for a region that I believe should lead not just in Ontario, not just in Canada, but should be in the world, and I'm sure the guys at ICF will help us do that. I'll end it there.
No, that's fine. Just before Doug, I'm going to put you on the spot, Rick.
I'm here.
Walking up here.
But I use the whiteboard, though. Yeah.
Walking up here, I asked you, so what do you think of the audience? And you said it's a great audience. The problem is we're preaching to the choir.
I'm sorry, I called you the choir.
Do you want to elaborate?
Well, now you put me on the spot.
I told
We
you I was
go
gonna put you on the
to,
spot.
and I know you all do, we go to Smart City, Intelligent Community conferences. Frankly, we can be at one every week. And I know we see very familiar faces, and many of you know us, and we know many of you. This is like a small piece of what ultimately the community stands for and who we try to represent. So how do we start to make this understandable, I guess, to the common person that lives in the region? How do we start to translate all the conversations we have truly to how it's impacting quality of life and get a broader and a larger engagement and involvement to be part of this innovation culture that we need to build? And I didn't mean that, by the way, in a derogatory way, because we're part of the choir and we like to have these conversations. How do we take this to the next level, and how do we accelerate this? And how do we really get into a different mindset of thinking? A good example, and I actually don't know how in our region, I think we're okay, but there's still cities in developed countries, very very sophisticated cities that tooth to nail fight Uber to come in. And I have a pet peeve with that, because how can you say we're innovative, we want to be collaborative, we want to invite creativity and startups and this new economy, but then we're telling Uber you cannot come because you're disrupting the taxi industry. And that to me is immediately a red flag. And I think that's still happening too much. So we may all agree, but I think once we start to really want to accelerate this journey, we need to figure out ways how to make this digestible by the masses and make them part of the conversation.
Thank you, Rick.
I'm going to go without my slides. I had some, and I'm going to keep the conversation going and hopefully build an arc of this. I'm new to your conversation. I've never been here before, and so if you're going to the same things every week, you haven't heard from Dublin, Ohio. You may have heard of Dublin, Ohio, but you haven't seen me here, and I want to continue along some of the lines there. But I do want to note the question that everybody comes to these kinds of events with is, you know, well, what does it all mean and how do we get started? What does it mean to me? How can we elevate and accelerate some of the things that we're talking about doing? And so I will just mention that Dublin, Ohio is a 6-time either top 21 or top 7 winner of Intelligent Communities Forum Award. I don't think that we wanted to continue to compete for a number 1. We don't feel like we've missed out on anything. We've got it. We understand the ICF principles and the movement. We are a member of the movement. I'm also a groupie of the founders, and we follow a lot of what they say, and we've spoken to them quite a bit. Dublin, Ohio is the home of the second institute of ICF. So there are 2. One is in Mississippi, and the other one is in Dublin, Ohio. It's called the Global Institute for the Study of the Intelligent Community, the sexiest name that we could come up with. Just rolls off the tongue. You'll never forget it. But this institute is an opportunity for us to spread the principles of ICF and intelligent community as a movement throughout our state. Also throughout the world. We work with ICF, and our commitment is to doing this around the world. However, we have a general focus for the state of Ohio, and we are conducting an experiment. What would happen if a community like Dublin, Ohio, and Columbus, Ohio, right next door, and nearby Cleveland, Ohio, all winners of top 7 or top 21 or number 1 awards, were to work together to spread these principles and concepts to rural, urban, and suburban communities throughout the state? Could we potentially compete? And that's why I asked my question of Robert earlier. As a state, as a new division or definition of what a community is, something we haven't done before. Our institute has had roadshows, regional roadshows, in which we have carried what we have learned to 5 different regions in the state of Ohio. So we went to Southern, we've gone to Akron and Cincinnati and Toledo area, Bowling Green, all of these places. And we are collecting learnings from different places. And something that I want to note about particularly the concept of diversity and having the people in the room or part of the discussion, the Institute and its roadshows is a good way for a region or a newly defined community to bring together different voices. We've talked to very small niche player telecom organizations, internet service providers, universities, students, entrepreneurs, and kind of a vertical integration of government. So we're at county, state, city, and federal level. So those are some of the things that we have done that have allowed us to integrate some more diversity into our conversation. I just want to mention a couple of very large projects. One of them is our 100 gig project. You can't do anything in broadband without saying the words 100 gig now. Not that anyone can use it or will be using it, but we use it as an economic development tool. Certainly we generate revenue from our broadband network. Certainly we use it to attract businesses to our area. And as has been said in a couple of the presentations today and what we've discussed, you're not so much attracting businesses and tech companies to your area, you're attracting their employees. Because when that business shuts down, those employees, if they are attracted to your area, they will stay, and another company will come in and grab them. And when you build a growing ecosystem of tech talent and this is a key principle of the intelligent community movement, knowledge workforce. When you create that, you are no longer dependent on attracting companies in. You're really attracting engineers in, or some of the best jobs. That's the key. And so that's what we're using our 100 gig project to do. We subsidize rack space and transport over our network so that businesses can get access to more carriers. Another thing that we're doing that we're very soon announcing is we've created a smart mobility corridor. And a lot of, when people say smart city, they're really talking about transportation and mobility. And our US 33 corridor, it's about 35 miles that connects the city of Columbus on up to the city of Marysville, where Honda manufacturing and Honda R&D of the Americas are. So having a major automaker or any type of manufacturer close by is key. And our Transportation Research Center. This is a collaboration with our university, Ohio State University, our health systems, and it's a big deal that we're doing that. So that's how we've taken our wins with Intelligent Community Forum and translated them into additional projects along the way, which continue the economic development and continue the movement so that we can continue to participate in the awards process for ICF. And we see that as key to completing the objectives that we have. So I'll stop there for other pieces of conversation.
Thank you, Doug. But before you hand that off, just you had pointed out sort of at the outset the awards, and congratulations. Just a question, how have those awards been translated, or how do they get translated to the benefit of the average citizen or the community? Maybe you can point to some of that, to the actual sort of, it's not just about the awards, but what that means, how that translates for the community, or has.
Yeah, well, 6 times, and I wouldn't underestimate the influence of these particular awards. We all participate in numbers of awards, and communities use them to put the glass plaque up on the wall and to put a sign up maybe on a street entering, you know, biggest this, most this, fastest broadband, this and that. The ICF awards are international. They truly are. They're not regional or local, and they do attract attention. You have to use the moment of winning an award or even competing for an award, and it does not have to be number 1. A top 21 or top 7 can be translated into attention to other businesses. And the very large business community pays attention on an international level. So, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, if you're trying to attract businesses from Germany or China, or, you know, places to set up manufacturing in your community, you can use these awards in that way. So they have almost an immediate and direct effect on your reputation nationwide. When you look at places like where the Corn Palace is, Mitchell, they otherwise probably, if they got a whole bunch of different kinds of awards, would not be able to translate that into getting more attention to what they're doing. So I think that our average everyday citizens do recognize that. And on the street, if you were to walk around in Dublin, they wouldn't be able to name this award, but they know we got the biggest or best something, and we're special, and we want to move here, and we're an incredible community. So it raises a kind of camaraderie and agreement amongst the community that our local government knows what they're doing, and they are doing the right things for us. And that engenders trust, and as has been said earlier, if you don't have the voters with you, you can't do a lot of things. You can go around them sometimes, but that is another building block for getting the trust of your citizens and residents.
Thank you. And something I think, sort of as Rick pointed out, something we can do better as Canadians, just sort of pointing to the successes. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? In fact, it's things that sort of allow us to, if you will, sort of point to the things that will benefit economically our citizens, our citizenry and such, and then allow us to do the things that we need to do beyond that. But thank you.
I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about, I guess, the business side and the growth of how Stratford became a 3-time top 7 community. I'm going to steal a line from Robert that he said earlier, which was a tale of 2 economies. I think he ripped off that line from somebody else, but we'll just go with that. So a tale, yeah, that's right. A tale of 2 economies. So ours was a tale of 2 stories, and those 2 stories really converge, and I think that's what allows you to become kind of an ICF intelligent community. On the one story was the city of Stratford believed deeply in maintaining its infrastructure. So that infrastructure for us back in the late 90s was the electrical infrastructure at first. In the late 90s, we had a deregulation of the electricity market. We call it a re-regulation. And basically, municipalities were given their electrical assets to do with what they wanted. Stratford believed very heavily in owning their assets to be able to control their future. And they also believed in it being just a great investment in buying other people's assets for Stratford's future and those communities' future. So as part of that deregulation and re-regulation, we had fiber optic assets, dark fiber, that the utility used to interconnect our own transformer stations, reclosers out in the network. So we had a backbone fiber network created. And as part of re-regulation, we had to spin those out into its own company. So we created, at that time, was known as Festival Hydro was the utility. Festival Hydro Services, Inc. was the company that dealt with the fiber. And we didn't do a lot with it for a number of years. So from 2000 till about 2010, we ran primarily as a dark fiber company. People would come to us and say, hey, I've got a factory at one side of town, and you pass the other factory that I have on the other side of town. Can you do a fiber drop to us? Or a school would come to us and say, hey, we need a fiber connection in. Or a hospital would say, hey, we need some dark fiber as well. This is probably a very familiar story for lots of you in terms of having that back-end fiber network. So I always say, as cities move towards that kind of broadband economy or broadband infrastructure, two things usually happen. One is some sort of event happens that leads you to look at the opportunity. And two is strong leadership within your community to get there. So for us, our catalyst event happened in 2010 when the province decided that smart meters were the way to move. So every home in Ontario, so 4 million homes, will have to be retrofitted with smart meters that push hourly data back to the utilities. So every other utility in the province decided to build a communication network to backhaul their smart meter data, but they decided to make it a proprietary system. All the system did was take 720 data points a month and move it back to the utility. I mean, millions and millions of dollars were spent to backhaul this information. Stratford took a different path, which was, well, we have a fiber optic network. We need to bring back this smart meter data. What should we do? And I thought it was leadership from the council level, leadership from the utility level and the boards to say, why don't we create a Wi-Fi network to backhaul this data? And that way, when we can backhaul the 720 points a month, that's easy. And then on the other times, we can use it as a broadband offering that we can provide our citizens that they can get more usage out of than just simply backhauling smart meter data. This was the catalyst, and there was the leadership. So over the time from 2010 till now, we've built out 300 access points across our community, and we backhaul all our smart meter data, so over 20,000 smart meter points each hour, back to the utility. And we also provide now ubiquitous Wi-Fi service. So we sell internet flat rate to our citizens. No contracts. They can, if they want to sign up, great. If they don't want to pay next month, no harm, no foul. And they keep moving on. And this has led to us to not only have a smart meter backhaul for our meters, residential customers. We also provide free zones in our downtown. So people will watch a video that we've interconnected with our utility, electrical safety videos, conservation videos, getting the messaging out there. So in a city like Stratford with a large number of tourists that come in, even in our off months, we'll get 1,000 to 2,000 people accessing that service and watching these videos and getting free internet access. The other thing that it's let us do is build the next layer, which is how do we use our community as a testing site? So I heard the term Google Car and the whole connected city and autonomous driving vehicles, and that's where Stratford's positioned itself now. We want to be the testing site for autonomous driving vehicles in the province of Ontario. If you have an autonomous vehicle, you come to Stratford to try it out because we already have the infrastructure in place for you to be able to try what does it look like on a Wi-Fi network, what does it look like on a 4G network, and you can do your testing there in a community that's ahead of the curve on technology and has the support of the municipal government to get you where you want to be. So that was very much our technical journey. At the same time, you have a journey, like we've mentioned before, it's not just about the technology, it's about the people. And how do you now start integrating your local community, your businesses, your municipal sector businesses, all to the greater good of the connected, intelligent community, and what does it mean? I've got a fairly short video that the city of Stratford put together for ICF, and I think it ties a lot of that convergence in fairly nicely. So I'll stop talking, you can watch the video, and then I think we'll probably be ready for some questions after that.
Sunrise over Stratford. You know what that means. Swans stirring on the Avon River. Our historic downtown waking up. The stage being set. And the scent of fresh roasted coffee in the air. This is a place where anything is possible. Heritage buildings light up our downtown. Witness to a proud past that's honored today by our spirit of reinvention. Welcome to a city of tomorrow. We've transformed into a world leader in digital infrastructure with smart technologies that support and nurture local businesses.
This community is rich with opportunity for small businesses and entrepreneurs, and it offers an unbeatable quality of life.
Stratford really is an amazing place to be. We get to make a wonderful living here, hang out with our friends, and enjoy so many benefits of big city living right here in Stratford.
We enjoy our own citywide high-speed fiber optic network. This investment provides fiber to our homes and businesses and wireless connectivity to every mobile device. Stratford sits adjacent to Southern Ontario's main business corridor, Highway 401, making our city a gateway to Toronto and the U.S. borders. Our mainline passenger and freight rail service runs direct to hubs like Buffalo, Detroit, and Chicago. You can get there from here. Our shops and storefronts hide wonders waiting to be discovered. People come from all over to search out our treasures, and for those who call Stratford home, there's a steady abundance. From gourmet chocolates to specialty cheeses and organic foods, we enjoy all the best in life. Our many food festivals and farmers markets are overflowing with fresh local produce and delicacies, while our restaurants serve up the cuisines of the world. Small business and entrepreneurs thrive here.
It's true. As neighbors, you have 700,000 skilled workers that have the same get up and go as you do.
And we have amazing support for businesses, both large and small, and a pro-business climate and the resources to help foster growth and success.
The air virtually crackles with energy as we lead the way in advanced manufacturing and innovation. Companies with global reach are investing here because we've built the foundations for success. Being located in Canada's leading manufacturing area provides a huge sector advantage, and our skilled workforce spans the disciplines from advanced robotics, aerospace, auto parts manufacturing, and banking. FAG Aerospace, Dynamig, Ysni Canada, RBC, Scotiabank. These companies have made Stratford home, and they keep our economy growing with jobs and opportunities. Our business community has top industry leaders, early adopters, and innovators all working together. And we've invested millions in infrastructure, with over 250 acres of zoned serviced employment lands, a world-class self-healing electrical grid, and carrier-grade IT infrastructure that's ready to go when you are. Our ecosystem of digital innovators and content creators are exploring new frontiers of collaboration and developing cross-platform applications and online services that are redefining the ways we work and play. We've always prospered because of our visionary thinking and our willingness to take risks and invest in the future. 4 universities and 2 highly regarded technical colleges are within an easy hour's drive. We're proud to be home to the new Stratford campus of the University of Waterloo, a world-class university. The campus offers an innovative master's program in technology, digital media, and commercialization, and a groundbreaking 4-year undergrad program in innovation and global entrepreneurship.
Anything that you want in the way of digital media and communications is available right here. The potential is limitless. The University of Waterloo chose Stratford to be the place where we are literally reinventing the post-secondary education model.
We're bringing the future to life right here in Stratford.
We're also home to Canada 3.0, the nation's key digital media conference. Each year, thought leaders and visionaries from around the globe come together in Stratford to map out Canada's digital future. The Stratford Institute, a national think tank for digital media, is driving collaboration and advancing Canada as a digital force. And we're the founding hub of the Canadian Digital Media Network, where technology research meets business. A truly smart city is one that knows how to play, and Stratford is a very smart city. Our community comes together in work and in play, and many of our festivals and events are held riverside. We put dragons in the water, and magic flows in our streets. There's always something going on, and new things to discover. The flowers are one of the first things you notice. We have a tremendous amount of civic pride, as you can tell when you walk down any street. Stratford enjoys the largest park area per capita of any city in Canada, with over 1,000 acres of groomed parkland steps from our front doors.
This is a great place to raise a family. Great schools, safe neighborhoods,
Come on, Dad, let's go.
and no shortage of after-school activities.
Whatever your style, we've got the neighborhood to match. Stratford's prosperous history has left an inheritance of beautiful tree-lined streets and landscaping, and our community takes great pride in maintaining it. Heritage homes, many over 100 years old, are found everywhere, with some overlooking the river. There are executive homes with every modern amenity, great starter homes, executive condos, and modern retreats all waiting for you. We're building new traditions, schools, and neighborhoods now. We take care of each other, and that's exemplified in both our national healthcare system and our local hospitals. We've invested heavily in a modern and interconnected hospital system that provides the very best in advanced healthcare. Our medical talent is top-notch, and with the latest in e-health connectivity and robotic and diagnostic technologies, we enjoy a quality of patient care on par with major centers. As day turns to night, we head out in search of cuisine, conversation, and culture. Stratford's restaurant scene offers a range of culinary experiences not to be missed. And after dinner comes the show. And you know you're in Stratford when legends like Christopher Walken, Martha Henry, and Christopher Plummer take the stage. We've been captivating audiences with world-class theater for 60 years, and we attract over 500,000 visitors each year. Our legacy in the arts has helped us imagine and create our place in the world, today and tomorrow.
We're making smart investments in our future and yours. Stratford has become a place where anything is possible. Past, present, future. Inspiring, innovative, and exhilarating. Welcome to a city of tomorrow.
Who wants to move to Stratford?
Land for sale for you if you do.
Is it on the swamp? Thank you. So I think we got a really good cross-section of ideas flowing here. I think at this point, because we've got probably about here another 10 minutes, opening it up for some questions. Is there a mic in the audience, or are we going to be... Are there any questions? So the gentleman at table 6. Maybe you can introduce yourself and before the question.
Sure. I'm Bob Kirikides from Digital Hero. I have an IT company, and we work in the trenches every day. So Rick mentioned security, so I'm going to jump on that one because the short hairs on the back of my neck stood up. What we do is at the bottom level of what you've drawn there, the 4 devices, the Internet of Things, and of course what we had demonstrated to us a week ago was how they can be compromised, weaponized, and pointed at a target. Can you talk about what we're doing to solve that problem? And then also if I can perhaps have the other guests jump in and let us know how their smart communities have handled that. You know, is it something that is a permanent fix? Is it something that's ongoing? Thank you.
The truth is I probably can't. I'm not a security expert. I think there's 2 parts to this. One is human behavior. I think part of the problems last week was passwords of devices being still factory settings. So if we don't train ourselves on how to do the right thing around creating security profiles around us or around our things, and that's a challenge. Second, I think, is security is not just on the things, but it goes into the network, it goes into the cloud, it goes into the applications. This cannot be a duct tape solution that is an afterthought. Security has to be a critical component of any digital transformation strategy. And I think still too often, and we're really probably just catching up, and we'll probably never get ahead of it, but we're still not finding it sexy enough. Rather spend money on something that's visible, that requires, that could result into a photo op and some media, as opposed to spending the money where we should be spending it today, and that is that digital infrastructure that is highly secure and open and scalable and all the things you heard Robert talk about as well. But I don't know.
Sorry, Rick, just in my own experience, it's not about technology, and I think that's what you're saying. It's about awareness.
It's all of it. I think it's not one or the other. It's an integrated approach.
Right.
So I will add that I heard recently, and I agree with, that as a government, we have a responsibility to make some of this happen. And we are responsible for the government infrastructure and making sure that that's secure and we do our job. We also find that businesses and the business community are doing what they need to do for securing their businesses. And we find that individuals and homes are. But if everyone does their individual job, there are still big, wide holes in our security stance. And what I've heard and what I agree with is that we as a local government need to take responsibility for the entire community, things that we are not directly responsible for. And so what I'm doing in Dublin is beginning a security coalition to draw in the business community in particular. Can we agree upon certain standards and protocols? Can we share information? Because if this manufacturing facility has a great security stance and this home has a different one, and this local government or this county or this fire department, all of us have different perspectives, but we're not necessarily sharing. That local government is not putting out a standard for others because there's a certain aspect of Big Brother in there and not wanting to do that. But I do think that we can cross this line by having a local government such as ourselves and a CIO take responsibility for a community, drawing other people in. And I'd like to see that happen across the board for many communities where an entire region could have a general conversation, put out platform documents and standards that are common to all of us. And if we had some knowledge that all of us were following much of that, we could plug some of these holes. Are we going to get to web cameras? Possibly not, but we can elevate ourselves well beyond where we are right now. And I think that goes along with any instance of smart city or technologies or sensors and cameras that we're putting out there. We will secure the infrastructure we've installed, but that just isn't good enough. We need to have a conversation with people we do not control and get general agreement on standards.
Yeah. So just to elaborate on that for a moment, Doug, maybe you can speak to it, but I found, at least in the corporate space, that when you have an entity that is hacked, that is security breached and so on, they somewhat wear these as badges of embarrassment, right? A badge of weakness on them. And so there's very little sharing, in fact, right? I think it was at earlier this year in the spring, there was a breach at the University of Calgary, or University of Alberta in Calgary, and they took an opposite approach. They announced it. It was a whole press release of what had happened and how they were dealing with it. They took a different approach, and that was, look at what's going on. It's one of building awareness. What can a community do beyond sort of, and maybe that's something you can speak to or you have a familiarity with or given some thought from a government's perspective in terms of sort of drawing these things out, sort of drawing sort of more awareness within the corporate world and sort of building more of a platform there. I don't know.
I do, and I do think that we need to sort of go in a different direction from where we typically have been. There are serious economic implications to admitting that you have a security problem, both for a private company and for a government. Credit ratings, disaster, fire and brimstone. I mean, it's horrible. And so there's a mountain of incentive not to share that information, right. Which is why we need to get on the front side and say, why don't we come together without anyone talking about their breaches and talk about what are we doing to have common platforms. What are you doing to stay secure? We won't talk about the past right now, but at least have the kind of relationships and trust in the room so that we can have an honest conversation about how do we secure ourselves right now. And then when that institution or that collaborative exists, we're in a better position to share information on breaches, on breakdowns, and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to do.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, sorry.
Hi, I'm Lucy Kasasha from Siemens Canada, and I want to thank everybody in the room here because I think with the show of people and our initiatives here, we can really do a lot to change our future towards intelligent communities. And I'd like to just follow up on a comment Rick made regarding the ROI on innovation and how challenging it is. The return on the investment for innovation when we're not buying commodity products. These are things that have long-term payback, and innovation can create more economic prosperity than we can ever measure. So for the two from the cities, from Dublin and Stratford, could you talk about your governance process that you use to implement some of the things that helped you to achieve your intelligent community status?
I'm glad you asked that question.
So I heard a comment earlier today which was about be slow, right? So that's my biggest piece of advice that I can give, is that if day one you're thinking, how do we fiber connect every home in our community and make everything gigabit day one, that's a very difficult road to walk. So what we found was the way to do it. So Rhizome Networks it's a private company. So we're not tax funded. We had to go get our own loans. We had to put our business plans together. We had to build it from the ground up. So what we found was about, step one is having the backbone, those anchor tenants that want to be interconnected, and you start building out your fiber network. You will find that as you get down to the road and you connect that hospital, on the way down to that hospital, there's going to be 3 or 4 other people who say, you know what, I could use a fiber connection. And you start layering that onto your business plan to get the paybacks in the time frame that you need. A lot of fiber interconnections, just so people realize, if you're doing a fiber to the home play, you kind of need about a 60 to 70% pickup rate of people that you go to getting your fiber, and it's still a 7-year payback. So this isn't you put it in and you're going to get your money back today or tomorrow, and you've got to have that in your minds. So I think that slow growth, picking up your anchor tenants, slowly expanding your fiber network, and then making those investments where they make sense in Wi-Fi or lit fiber or whatever the next thing is, to me is how you make those business plans work and how you move forward.
How do you drag, sorry, maybe that's not the right word. How do you work with government? How do you bring government along? Oops. In that model.
So with us, we were blessed. So our mayor, Dan Matheson, is a very forward-thinking mayor, and he sat on our utility board and he sat on our fiber optics company board. So you need to have these people who are getting cross-pollinated in all these spaces, so that you need to bring in your council and your community so they understand what's going on. If you just leave them in the dark and think that you're going to spend or put to risk $30 million, $40 million, $50 million of money, you're going to have a real problem. We've seen that play out in other communities. You got to shine the light on it. You got to let people know what you're doing. You got to get out there and communicate. You're going to get some pushback that people will say, hey, the big incumbents can provide that service. The truth of the matter is, what we found is, even open access. When we built our networks and you say, hey, come use it, everybody says no. Until you find a partner who says, hey, I'll use your network, and they start building on it, and everybody else goes, we better get on this as well. And all of a sudden the floodgates open. So it's about having those proper partnerships. It's about having the community on board. And how do you get them on board? It's information and it's time. Show them the success story. Show them how you're going to do it. And show them that you're not going to bite off too much at the beginning, so they can all get comfortable with it.
Thank you. Doug, did you want to add
And
something?
I'd just like to mention the Dublin Community Recreation Center, which is a rec center. It's a gym, it's a pool, a little pond out front where it's stocked, you can do some fishing. When we built that, there's no ROI on that. And folks said, it's a horrible idea. Why would you do that? Why are we spending money? There's a gym down the street. Why should we as a community do that? Over the years now, the entire community uses it. There are rooms for elders get tax advice. There are karate classes. It's a community recreation center. What is the ROI on that? It's difficult for folks to put their finger on that. And when you bring out that success at the moment where people say, why do you want to spend $30 million on a fiber network? And you can say, well, look at the Dublin Community Recreation Center. You remember saying no to that? And another point to your question, and that brings citizens along. How do you get the government to come along? Governments, local governments in particular, typically do what their citizens tell them to do. And so when you're educating and constantly communicating with the citizens, we don't have the barrier that we once had.
Yeah. So wonderful. Active panel and questions, and Charles is telling me we need to turn this down. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to everybody's questions here, but do we have time for one more, Charles, or we'll squeeze one more in? So I see there's two people at table 5.
Hey, Alfonso. Howard Morton with Boardwalk International. I've got a question for both you and Rick. 48 hours ago, a $75 billion organization known as Google and their parent company Alphabet announced thousands of layoffs as they shut down their Google Fiber build-out. Certainly, we've seen in a number of communities across North America, recently in Scugog, the cost overruns. This is not like we've heard a lot of the upside, but it's not a decision to be taken lightly. Talk about the need to have a fully integrated solution, both involving the education system and full smart city versus building dark fiber. Because we're seeing across North America, people who are building dark fiber are not only stubbing their toes, but they're driving the transport truck off the road.
Good question. Let's see if we can sort of address that. Who wants to take that question?
I think it was for you.
Was it directed at me? See, that was a deflection. You know what, Howard? I've known you for a number of years. It's been a while since we've spoken. Was this your way of getting my attention? You know, and I sort of, I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit sort of taken off my game. But you know, Orion is, as I said in the outset, we're in I'd like to say sort of a unique situation, a unique position. For those of you that know Orion, you know us as a network hub addressing education and hospitals, libraries, communities. Are we doing enough? No. Are we doing sort of what we can with the tools we have? Absolutely, and we recognize there's far more to be done. At the outset, I mentioned one of those things that we know that we can do better and have targeted in doing better is addressing remote Aboriginal and Northern communities. And we're working with government, we're working with communities, we're working with private sector, because that's really the only way to make that happen. I've shared this as an analogy with my colleagues, and I'll just sort of make it relatively quick, but just to show the disparity between sort of some of these smaller communities and urban centers. I've got a 14-year-old who doesn't know how to do anything without his smartphone. I was driving through a northern community a few weeks back, and at the edges of that community there was probably about 15 or so I'd say sort of teenagers with their iPhones or their smartphones, and they had them sort of held up in the air at the edge of a street. And I realized what they were looking for is they were looking for a bar. They were looking for a way to connect to their, if you will, sort of whatever, to get connected to the community. Take that by contrast, my 14-year-old son lives in the city, who was incredibly frustrated a few weekends ago because he was to meet somebody and was frustrated because he couldn't get in touch with them. And I made the stupid remark, pick up the phone and call him. And he says, Dad, I Snapchat. Nobody uses the phone for anything less. So that's the sort of the disparity in both those sort of scenarios. Can we do more? Absolutely. And I'll tell you for a fact that is a key component for Orion and our mandate. And Howard, love to talk to you a bit more about that, and anybody else who's willing to listen, to be quite frank.
Can I just make a quick comment on that? I think that was my
we do
point.
need to, I'm getting sort of, I think this is the proverbial sort of like
The hook?
the
I can
hook
be really
off
quick.
the stage.
This was that issue that I was talking about in terms of penetration rates. If you think you're going to go into a community with 3-4 major carriers and pick up 60 or 70% of the customers that you go past, you're not going to do it. And that's why you're seeing, I'll call them urban-rural, actually getting to fiber to the home faster than very urban centers, because the competition is non-existent. They'll have independent carriers, one carrier who picks up almost 100% of the community. They can make that investment and make it work. This is the problem. 3 or 4 carriers and nobody wants to move because nobody has over 20 or 30% of the market share, and they can't make the paybacks work. I don't have the answer for it, but that's the problem.
Yeah. Thank you.